number 1, I had all these preset pretty colors and something happened. You had to write it in slope-intercept form, so you had to find your slope and your y-intercept in order to do that. Some of you counted from here to here, so that would be going down 4 to the right 10, or vice versa, up 4, left 10. But we also need to simplify, so this would be -2/5, which means if I go down 2 and right 5, there should be another point on that line where my slope is. And then you also need your y-intercept, which happens to be that same point, at -4. So then we would write our slope and y-intercept in the y equals mx plus b, our slope-intercept form. Y equals -2 this x minus 4. Anyone have questions about that one?
How do you get 4?
Here, wherever this line crosses the y-intercept, y-axis would be your y-intercept at -4.
So wherever's crossing that y-axis would be the y-intercept.
Since I wasn't here last class, I just did the counting for the slope.
For the slope?
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's what I did since I wasn't here last class.
That's fine.
That works out just fine, yeah. And like every time I think of the intercept, I think of football. Because they have to intercept to get the ball, right?
For number 2, you didn't need to do B. Some of you tried, disregard that part. But for A, we should have been thinking what we did last class, the end of last class. So you have a point, you have a slope, so you're going to use your point-slope formula. I would get in the habit of writing this down every time you go to use it, that way you start to remember it, because you'll need to know it for the quiz and tests. And then we have x1, y1, m, so I'm going to replace all of those values. Y minus 3 equals my slope of 1/2. X minus my x1 is -4, so I'm going to put that in parentheses. I don't know if we did an example quite like this one. We may have, I don't remember. But if you have something in here, just like if we had a negative over here, we would have to make this plus before we distribute. Because if we start distributing while that's still a negative, you may end up with the wrong thing. So now that this is plus, we can distribute. And then get y by itself by moving the 3 over. So our final equation, y equals 1/2 x plus 5. So if you got that, good job. Give yourself a pat on the back. Questions about that one?
Sometimes when it says point or slope-intercept form, we immediately think that formula. But if we only have one point given, then we can't really do slope-intercept form.
Also, I saw a lot of putting this and the y value in. That is a y value on the line, but not your y-intercept, where it crosses your y-axis. So try to keep those two things separate, straight in your mind. Then this last one asks us to write an equation of a vertical line. So if we're thinking or hear the words vertical or horizontal, we should be thinking for those. Vertical would be an x equals. So our equation is going to be x equals some number. We look at our point, see the x value, and that would be 4. So our answer would be x equals 4. So with those type of problems, you kind of have to know what you're looking at, what you're looking for to get those right. Do we have any questions about that one? When we get back from lunch, we're going to continue the same notes from last class, doing that last section. So with this section, you're given 2 points. If you don't know your slope, you don't know your slope, you don't know your y-intercept, so now you're going to have to do an extra step in order to find those things.
I see.
So I'm going to go ahead and write our slope formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And then I know you guys have this at the top of your page, so you don't have to rewrite it, but I'm going to. Our y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. So we're going to be using our slope formula and our point slope formula to figure this out. So with number 1, I'm going to go ahead and label x1, y1, x2, y2. And then use those to find my slope. So 4 minus 1 all over 2 minus 3. And then simplify. 3 over negative 1, or just negative 3. Then you have a choice. You can choose one of these order pairs to do this next part. The only thing with that is you're not choosing both, so I wouldn't use this x and this y, or this y and this x. I would choose all of this point or all of this point, not both. So you really only have to do this once, even though there are 2 of them, 2 points of them. I'm going to show you both ways so that you see that both work, but you only have to do this once. So let's say I choose this first point, and I start putting this into my point slope formula. Y minus my y1 is 1 equals my slope is negative 3. And then parentheses x minus 3. And then I would go from there, distribute, and get y by itself. So y minus 1 equals negative 3x plus 9. Be careful with your signs. And then add 1 to both sides. So y equals negative 3x plus 10 would be your final answer. Do we have any questions on that before I show you the second way? Okay. So if you choose the first ordered pair, you do not need to do the second one, but if you want to see that this works, I'll show you that you can use the other one. Same process, but now you're using the other ordered pair. So y minus 4 equals our slope stays the same, that does not change. And then x minus 2. And then if I distribute, I'd have y minus 4 equals negative 3x plus 6. Again, be careful with your signs. And then get rid of the 4 by adding it to the other side. So y equals negative 3x plus 10. You get the same thing either way. So this would be a good way to check yourself. If you do it one way and you get an answer, do it the other way. See if you get the same answer. That would tell you you did it right the first time. If you get a different answer, you either did it incorrectly the second time or did it incorrectly the first time. So you'd have to check both. Questions about that? Okay, we're going to do a couple more. We'll come, yeah, we're gonna do 4 and then 3, backwards. We'll do 3 and 4. So your first step for all of these is always gonna be the same, find your slope. So this would be 0 minus 0 minus a negative 8 over negative 7 minus 5. So 8 over negative 12. And that can be simplified down to what? You were thinking divide by 4. So negative 2/3. And that's going to be your m. If you have an ordered pair that has a 0, I would say use that one because it'll make your life a little bit easier. So in this case, if I use my negative 7, 0 instead of the 5, negative 8, this would be y minus, my y1 is, or in this case y2, is 0, equals my slope of negative 2/3, and then x minus my negative 7. Make sure you change that to a plus before you distribute. But on this side, because we have y minus 0, the 0 kind of goes away. We can just drop that to y. So x plus 7, then we can distribute. In this case, our y-intercept is going to be a fraction. That's okay. That happens sometimes. So we have y equals negative 2/3 x minus, this would be negative 2 times 7 over 3. So y equals negative 2/3 x minus 14/3 would be our final answer. So if we use the one that has a 0, we end up having less steps. Questions about that one? Okay, then we're going to do one more example and then any problems you guys want to see or try, go over. So if we're using that same mindset, do the one that has a 0. First, let's do our slope. So we have 8 minus 3 over 0 minus a negative 1. Okay, let's try to get this. What would our slope be here? 5. If you get a problem like this where you have 0 then a number, first, before I ask or say this, does anyone know what this is just by looking at it? It's okay if you don't, I'm just trying to say. If I graph this point, where would this fall?
On the y line?
On the y-axis. So this would make this a y-intercept because it falls on the y-axis. So if you see something like that, you don't have to do the rest of the work. You can just put in your slope and your y-intercept because you have those two and say y equals 5x plus 8. Now, you may forget that this is your y-intercept and still do the work. It would still work out the same. Anyone need or want to see that work? So if you have 0 as your x, that is your y-intercept, you have less work to do, and you can just put that in your equation. Same thing with 5, that would be your y-intercept. Right. Do we have any questions in general, specifically about the ones we've done so far? Okay. If not, look at numbers 2, 5, 6, or on the very last page, second to last page, ///. Numbers 13 through 18. Look at any of those. Are there any you see that you want to go over, have questions about, want to do together?
Number 6.
Number 6 on the first page. Any others? I'll circle this one and then come back. (13 through 18 on the last page, 2 or 5 on this page, and 5 on this page. Any others?
Okay.
Sure. So we'll start with 2 and then go 5 and then 6. I really don't have space up here, but. Okay, so find your slope first. You have -8 minus 12 over 4 minus and -1. Do that math. What would your slope be? Because this would be -20 over a positive 5, which would give us -4. So that way it's accepted. You want me to read it off to you? Over 4 minus -1. And -20 over 5. And then, do we want to use the first point or the second point? It doesn't matter. Second, okay. If you want to use the first, go for it. So we have y minus our -8 equals our slope of -4, and then in parentheses, x minus 4. So mine's a little smushed together, so if you need to see it better, Miss Larson has it on the board over there. So we're going to distribute and make the y minus a -8 plus in the same step. So y plus 8 equals -4x plus 16. And then to get y by itself, we would get rid of the 8 by subtracting. So y equals -4x plus 8. Even if you use the first point, you should still get that same answer. Questions on that one? For number 5, let's find the slope of that one. We have the ordered pair -2, 6, and 0, 0. X1, Y1, X2, Y2. This would be 0 minus 6 over 0 minus a negative 2. What would that slope be? Negative 3, because this would give us negative 6 over positive 2. And then do we have to do the rest of the work for this one? No. Why not?
Because the y is 0.
Because in this case, it's really because the x is 0.
Yeah.
Which makes it the y-intercept. So because that's our y-intercept, we can go ahead and skip all the rest of those steps and go straight into our equation. Y equals negative 3x. You can put plus 0, leave the 0 off. That part doesn't matter. If you were doing the work, I would say use that point because it'll make your life a little bit easier. Less work to do. Questions on that one? And then number 6, I'm going to do that out here because I'm running out of space. So find your slope first. So we have negative 2 minus 5 over 5 minus negative 2. What would this slope be? Negative 1. So this would be negative 7 over positive 7, which would give us negative 1. Right? Then do we want to use the first or the second point? Doesn't matter. Okay. So if we're using the second point, we would have y minus our y2 equals our slope of negative 1, x minus our x1. Then, as before, we can make this plus and distribute at the same time. So y plus 2 equals negative 1x plus 5. And then to get y by itself, we do what? Subtract 2. Y equals negative 1x plus 3, or y equals negative x plus 3, either or. Questions about that one? Do we have any questions on 13 through 18 that we want to see go over before I let you guys practice? On that page. On the very last page.
Those are fairly similar to what you guys have for the quick check.
If we don't have any questions that we want to go over together, I would say since we tried all the ones on this page, try as many as you can on that last page, 13 through 18. Do at least 3 of them. And then if you feel like you need more, continue doing the rest of those 6. after you do at least 3 of this section, 13 through 18, then you can work on the 2 Khan Academy quizzes that are due on Friday. But do at least 3 of these first. And then if